and I am looking forward to working with my colleague on going through the arduous 3-week process of line-by-line analysis and department-by-department conversation with the leaders of the administration to try to figure out how we can kind of rework the framework of this budget suggestion that was put up today. I guess I have to follow up on comments made by our Democratic leader a few minutes ago that really kind of shapes our particular view about this. There is, I don't think anywhere in this budget can you see any shared sacrifice in reference to who has to take the brunt of trying to balance this state budget. What we do see very clearly is in terms of spending in basic education, and I don't think we need to overlook this, almost a $1.1 billion cut in spending for basic education. What we do see in spending for higher education, or investments in higher education, I'd rather use that term, investments in higher education, there's almost $1 billion in cuts in investments to higher education, and we need to be very clear about what we're talking about here. Back in the region where I hail from, Temple University goes from $164 million down to 82. That's a 50% decrease. Lincoln University from 13 to 6, a 50% cut. Cheney University, Westchester University, and all the universities as part of the 14-state system of higher education university system, 50% cuts. Even Penn State University, with its regional campuses in southeastern Pennsylvania, the overall budget goes from $304 million down to $152 million. That's a 50% cut. And if you drive west to southwestern Pennsylvania, the University of Pittsburgh and its related campuses across that region, $160 million to $80 million. That's a 50% cut. Now, what does that translate to, Mr. President? That translates largely to dramatic increases in tuitions, probably in the 20 to 25% area, to try to recoup some of the loss that occurred from state budget cuts. What does that also translate to, Mr. President? It probably translates into a significant number of jobs being eliminated on these campuses. All kinds of jobs, teaching positions, administrative positions, support positions, folks doing all kinds of work on these campuses more than likely will have to lose their job, and students will have to increase their tuitions, which makes this so much more difficult, Mr. President, because the investments that we need to be making, to get us through the recession will be stunted. We won't be able to make these investments anymore. Children will be the opportunity to realize their dream by going to one of these fine universities. All right, that opportunity will be denied them because it will be out of the reach of the pocketbook. They will not be able to afford it. There's now cuts being talked about in Washington, D.C. in terms of student loans and student grants from Washington, D.C. that comes down to the state level. So we're losing support in Washington. We're losing support here in Pennsylvania. What do we say to these students? They are taking a brunt, a significant brunt, a severe brunt. Higher education becomes only an option for those who are privileged, those who can afford it. Back to basic education, I'm not sure how we get away from the fact that if there's $1.1 billion in cuts for our schools, if there's $1.1 billion in cuts for our schools, I'll say it again, how do local school districts make up for that loss? They've got to find the money somewhere, or are we suggesting that, they should just cut back also? And their class sizes should increase dramatically, and their issues that they've got to confront. What do we say to them? What do we say to these local school districts? They're going to have to bear the brunt of this cut. And the problem with all of this, Mr. President, the problem with all of this is it is not a shared sacrifice. It is not balanced. There is no evenness in what the governor presented to us. The only good thing about this day is that the governor presented us a proposal, not a final done deal. We now have the opportunity to go back in and try to address these issues and try to move these issues around and hopefully gain some balance so that if there's going to be sacrifice, it is shared by everybody. What we know with our corporate friends in the business community, they did not take a haircut. They did not take any kind of cuts in any of the support that they get in Pennsylvania. And in fact, leading into the budget last week, while the state was cutting the adult basic program that so many of us have led the effort on the fight on, so many of us have stood on this floor, Senator Stack and so many of the rest, Senator Costa, myself, so many of us have stood on this floor and fought for the adult basic program and trying to urge this General Assembly and this administration to find a resolve for this while we're losing 42,000 people off of the adult basic program to get them health insurance. While that was happening, the administration made a conscious decision to provide a $200 million tax cut to major corporations in Pennsylvania. Now let's try it, and when we talk about shared sacrifice, Mr. President, there's no sharing in that. There's only one group of folks who get cut in that mix, and that's the 42,000 people who got cut off adult basic, not even counting the 500,000 or so individuals who are on the waiting list to utilize the adult basic program. So starting last week, before this budget is presented by the governor, last week the business sector got a $200 million tax cut. In this budget proposal, there's even more tax cuts offered up by the administration. Pushing back, renewing the phase-out of the capital stock and franchise tax, which was discussed earlier. That is a fine program and a fine agenda for us to go on. You don't pursue that agenda in difficult economic times. You don't do that. And if you do it, okay, you've got to moderate that in some fashion. You have to moderate that in some level to make sure that there's shared sacrifice. But there is no shared sacrifice here. And need I mention, Mr. President, those individuals, and I want you to draw a picture right now. Close your eyes and draw this picture. And I want you to think of the fanciest boardroom in the fanciest business office in the nation, maybe in the world. And I want you to think of the executives of Shell Oil and BP and the executives of all of the major drilling companies that are operating here in Pennsylvania. Those CEOs and those board members, I want you to picture them. They're sitting in that boardroom right now. Or maybe they're sitting in their yachts. Or maybe they're traveling in the Caribbean because it's cold here, but it's warm in the Caribbean. Or maybe they're in the south of France. Wherever they may be, I want you to picture them and understand this, that right now, those executives, those big shots, those heavyweights, those big dogs, okay, that we like to call them, they are laughing all the way to the bank. Because once again, we have a proposal on the table that indicates that they don't need to pay their fair share to this Commonwealth, to the taxpayers, and especially to those local communities where they're drilling in this Commonwealth, making tons of money, hand over foot, but not paying their fair share. They get a break. Again. They get left off the hook in this proposal. Now, how fair is that? Where is the sacrifice borne by everybody in that conversation? These individuals, when they put their business model together, Mr. President, to come to Pennsylvania, to drill in Pennsylvania, where we have the motherlode of shale, not just in Pennsylvania, not just in the Northeast region, not just in the Northeast corridor, we have the motherlode of shale throughout the United States of America. And if you drill down past Marcellus and you go even deeper to the Utica shale, the Utica reserves, We probably have the motherlode of shale in the entire world. That's what it's been reported on. And these guys have the rights to it. And they're just drilling, drilling, drilling. When they set up their business model, they knew at some point they were going to have to pay a fee to the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania because that is good business practice. Why did they know that? Well, they know that because they have to pay a fee in West Virginia. They know that because they have to pay a fee in Texas. They know that because they have to pay a fee in Oklahoma. They know that because they have to pay a fee in Alaska. They've got to pay a fee just about everywhere else. But then they come to Pennsylvania. So they've got this business model. They got the spreadsheet. I got to pay for this. I got to pay for that. I got to pay for this, my cost for doing business. And then there's a tax I got to pay. I know I'm going to have to pay in Pennsylvania. So year 1 goes past, and they don't have to pay it. Year 2 goes past. They don't have to pay it. Year 3 goes past. They don't have to pay it. Year 4 goes past. They don't have to pay it. Now, year 5, 6, and 7, the years are just growing and growing and growing, and they're not paying a dime. And yet, while we let those guys go, those fat cats, those big shots, those big dogs, while we let those guys go, they're just laughing. There's BP, Shell, all the rest of them. They're just rolling in the dough. Rolling in the dough. Oh, we're looking good here in Pennsylvania. They're rolling the dough, but we're cutting $1 billion out of the schools of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, and we're cutting almost $1 billion out of our higher education institutions and forcing tuition increases of 20 to 25%, and probably laying off people at each and every one of those universities. There's no fairness there. How do we let these guys off the hook? How do we let them off the hook? Even in a modest proposal, a modest program that was offered up recently, they get left off the hook time and time again, and it's not fair, it's not right, it's not appropriate, and I'm glad that what we heard today was only a proposal, because if we have some good sense and we want to do the right thing for the people, and especially the children, we'll revisit these guys and revisit some kind of assessment that needs to be put on their backs. They need to pay to do business in Pennsylvania, even if it's only a little bit. Even if it's only a little bit. It's their contribution for the destruction in the roads and the highways that they're doing, and for, at the very least, targeting those fees to try to protect the environment. Because right now, we don't have enough people paying attention to them, and we need to make sure that there's more people watching what they're doing and keeping an oversight of what they're doing so to make sure they do not destroy the environment, our precious environment in this Commonwealth. So if anyone wants to say that there has been shared sacrifice in this budget proposal, I think they're missing it, and I think they're missing it badly. We need to return to this document. We need to go through the 3 weeks of budget hearings. We need to modulate this. We need to work with this. We need to be conscious and thoughtful about what is in the best interest of the people of the Commonwealth. We need to make sure that if there's going to be sacrifice, that it has to be, in fact, shared. It has to be shared. And that children and families cannot carry on their backs balancing the state budget. What this state budget proposal does, Mr. President, is it balances this budget on the backs of working families and children. And those working in families and children did not cause this recession that we're in. The recession that we're in that causes the financial collapse that caused this recession was not caused by average working people in this Commonwealth. They didn't cause that. It was other folks who caused this recession. The budget should not be balanced on their backs. Hopefully, we'll have the good sense to make the appropriate changes. Thank you, Mr. President.